The Day of the Triffids. This is a BBC miniseries from 1981. This was directed by Ken Hanham, written by Douglas Livingstone, starring John Dutine, Emma Relf, and Maurice Colborne. This is an adaptation of the John Wyndham novel Day of the Triffids. How are you familiar with the Day of the Triffids? Like what it's about?
I know the concept, but that's about it.
Right. Well, I'll just give you a little rundown. So, like, this takes place in a world where there are plants called Triffids, and they can move and they can like attack people.
So they're sentient.
Yeah, they're like living. Yeah. They're like living plants. But one day, there's like this asteroid or comets in the sky. A big like astrological event, if that's the right term to use. And basically, it sends everyone blind because the lights fuck them up. And but our main character, Bill, luckily at the time of the comments, he was in hospital with his eyes bandaged up, so he didn't see. So he can see, and he's not the only person who can see. There are others, but the majority of the UK and possibly the world has become blind. So that's kind of it. That's kind of like your basic setup for Day of the Triffids. And with any good like science fiction-y type stuff, it's about that, but it's also about bigger issues in terms of like the world and just how stuff can, how like a big event like this can change.
Yeah, social issues.
Yeah, society and stuff like that. It has a really great opening sequence because
I think you showed me. Yeah.
I showed you. Yeah, it's got like it's really like probably cheaply done. But it's so effective because there's like these people and they're like looking up and there's like this like green sort of weird glow on them. And you just hear this like ethereal sort of Omen style singing, like demonic singing. It's fucking great, man. I really love shit like that. But the opening of the actual show, like the first scene, I couldn't believe because it's so similar. And by the way, I have read the book of Day of the Triffids, and this adaptation, I mean, it was years ago, but this adaptation does feel like it's practically spot on. Yeah, it's spot on, basically. Yeah. But I was so surprised because this film starts so similar to 28 Days Later. And I went on the Wikipedia for the novel, and it turns out that Alex Garland, the writer of 28 Days Later, was inspired by the book.
Oh, okay.
So like it's just funny though because the book itself came out in 51, so 30 years before this.
Yeah.
And it's just mad to think that like the ideas that they have now.
It's still influential today.
Yeah. I mean, because this is essentially it's a zombie story, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And like you've got double the zombies because you've got the blind who are just wandering about because obviously they can't see, and you have the Triffids, which are after everyone. Because at the start, no one really knows what the Triffids are, and it's kind of implied. We never get proper confirmation, but it's kind of implied that everything that's happening, the comets, the Triffids, and there's something else which I'll get into, is basically our fault, like the human race's fault. That's another sort of science fiction thing. Like it's never said, but our main character's like, the Triffids arrive and then we just happen to go blind and all that stuff, but maybe we had an influence on what happened. I love this type of science fiction though. Well, at the beginning, before like the big event happens with the comets, because I love when there's science fiction where it's like it's basically our world, but there's that slight difference, and like it's become like the Triffids have become normalized by this point of the story. Like people call them Triffs, and like our main character works with Triffids. He works on a Triffid farm because they produce this oil and all that stuff. Like I love when they sort of use slang like Triffs and we need to dock them, which means getting rid of the thing that they use to attack people.
It's a very immersive.
Yeah, because it's like when Black Mirror does sort of similar stuff where it's like it's our world, but there's that difference, which makes it completely different. The Triffid design I don't think it's a bad design, because normally when you go back to these older things, it's like the designs of stuff can be a bit shit. But I don't think it's a bad design. I just think it looks a bit silly because of the way it's shot. Because like, I reckon if this was made now, and I've got a feeling there will be one, and I know there is another one. I think in the 2000s.
2009 it came out.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And there probably will be another remake, but I do think they could use the same design from this and shoot it a bit differently.
Is it one of those cases where it's sort of best shot where you don't see the whole thing, just sort of see bits from certain positions, or do you reckon it should be not as brightly lit?
It's the lighting. It's the lighting because
okay.
like when you're out, when it's outside and the lighting's very sort of natural, and you know, there's no sort of shadow and that, and it can look silly.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that like normally when we talk about stuff like this, like Doctor Who, and I spoke about the Earth that caught fire, like 60s, 70s, even up to like 80s, which is 81. It's like we always kind of have to say, it's for the time, and like you have to go in it with, different things. But I will say with this, I do think modern audiences would like this. I don't think it's too much where it's like, you have to put it in the back of your head. Apart
is the pacing quite...
Yeah, I mean, because all in all, there's 6 episodes, and they are 25 to say 26 minutes long, so it's about 2.5 hours-ish, a bit longer. And it's just like, I reckon if this came out now and it was sort of rewritten and reshot, I could imagine the first 2 episodes being one episode, and then maybe they'd combine 3 and 4, and then maybe do like one more and have it like 3 or 4 episodes or whatever. But yeah, talking about the sort of themes of like society and stuff like that, because that's what it kind of is around like episode 3 and 4. Like, we sort of see the way different groups of people are dealing with this situation, and it's kind of funny because you have like the intellectuals, let's call them, and what they think they should abandon London and like the cities, move towards the countryside, and basically abandon the blind and let them just die, basically, to save the human race. But they believe they want to get rid of sort of marriage and sort of stuff like that. Like, their main purpose is to have all the females just reproduce and have the males do the work and stuff like
it's a
that.
Survival agenda.
Yeah. But it's kind of like what I got from it is that because they're so intellectual, they're like, this is how we need to progress as humans and all that. Whereas you've got this other group who want to help the blind, but the way they do it is more... in one bit of this story, Bill gets captured by this other gang, and he's forced against his will to help blind people. Which you've got this group which want to abandon the blind, but then you've got this group that want to help the blind, but they're doing it in a way which is sort of kind of bad as well. Yeah, because they're forcing.
It's for their own gain at the end of the day. Yeah.
And it's like it's like this sort of different, but the way the people who are like keeping sighted people against the will are kind of shown as being a bit working class, maybe a bit more human. Well, say that a bit more sort of like like the average person. Yeah, and it's funny because the intellectuals are sort of,
they seem like they're a bit more detached from reality.
That's it. That's it.
That's cool. That's cool.
And then there's also like sort of, although they're not in it as much as the other 2 groups, where they believe that God and religion will help them out in this situation. So it's kind of like that. But there's also another thing. I love as well the sort of like the way society is just going down the shitter, because like there's this illness which starts spreading, which is kind of like this mystery illness. And no one can fucking treat it because all the doctors have gone blind, and they can't make the medicine. And that's another thing. Was like, did the humans cause the illness? And that bit's kind. I think that bit, maybe it didn't feel as because it just sort of happens. People just becoming ill and people start dying off. So it's that was a bit strange, but. Yeah,
didn't seem like it was developed enough compared to the actual main concept of
the series. Yeah. But like, this is what I mean. I mean, it's called Day of the Triffids, But I think in like episode 3, until like sort of the end of the episode where the Triffids popped up, I sort of forgot they even existed. Like I was so into this like blind, the world's gone blind, and like what we're gonna do, that didn't even cross my mind. But then I loved it because I was like, well, this is what the Triffids are doing. It's like, because there's another thing, like how sentient are the Triffids, because they can't see but they seem to have an intelligence, and that's another thing which comes into it. Oh, and the way the Triffids sort of are like this threat in the background, and like everyone's dealing with this blind thing, and there's like, you just know they're there, you know what I mean? They're growing in numbers because there's no one to stop them from spreading, and it's just great to think like, I'm kind of spoilers, but by the end of the series, the Triffids are the main threat, if you know what I mean. And it's just great the way that builds up. Brilliant, man. Really, I love that shit. But yeah, Day of the Triffids, man, from 1981, I do recommend it, because even if you're not into like old science fiction-y stuff, I do think it's quite good. For something which is about 2.5 hours, you know, you could probably watch it in a day or whatever. And I will say, I watched episode 1, and then I didn't watch 1 till the next day, and all day I was just thinking like, oh, that's a fucking good show that is. You know what I mean? I was thinking like, I know the story because of the book, but like I was still thinking, like, where are they gonna go and all that stuff. So yeah, Day of the Triffids, 81. BritBox it's on, that's why I watched it. So yeah, Day of the Triffids, man.